Hey, let's fall asleep wondering about something boring, strange, and a little impossible. It happens in the middle of the night when no one's watching. No announcements, no warnings, just silence. The earth stops. It doesn't slow down or creak to a halt. It just stops. The same way a wind-up toy suddenly runs out of energy. 1 second you're spinning at over 1,000 miles an hour. The next, nothing. Stillness, like the universe just hit pause on the cosmic record player. And somehow, you don't fly off your bed. Gravity still works. You're not flung through the wall like a rag doll in a zero-G horror movie. No, your body stays perfectly still, tucked beneath your blanket. As if you've always been waiting for this moment. But the world outside your window is different. The atmosphere didn't get the memo. It was still racing along at over 1,600 kilometers per hour when the ground below it froze. Imagine it, an invisible blanket of air suddenly scraping across the surface of the planet. That would feel like the loudest, wildest, most chaotic windstorm the Earth has ever known. Hurricane-force winds in places that have never known a breeze. Trees bent sideways, windows shattered before dawn, rivers sprayed across entire towns like spilled water from a cosmic glass. On the coasts, the oceans would lurch sideways, the water still spinning even though the land beneath it had stopped. Tsunamis taller than office buildings would roll inland, washing over highways, forests and shopping malls. But let's make it a little less violent since we're here to fall asleep. Let's say in our thought experiment, the atmosphere and oceans gently follow the Earth's lead. They slow down magically too. No devastating winds, no global floods, just a quiet, eerie pause. Now think about the sky. Right now you're used to the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. That's thanks to Earth's rotation. Without it, the sun would freeze in place, locked wherever it was when the spinning stopped. If it stopped at 3 a.m. where you are, you'd be stuck in eternal night, cold, dark and motionless. But someone else, thousands of kilometers away, might be trapped in endless daylight, blinking up at a noontime sun that refuses to move. Imagine how strange that would be. A frozen sunset locked in brilliant oranges and pinks hanging in the sky for hours, then days, then who knows how long. Long shadows stretched across empty streets, children playing in the same puddle of sunlight day after day. On the night side, things would cool, slowly at first, then more dramatically. Temperatures dropping below freezing, the Earth's warmth radiating out into space without the sun to replace it. Plants would wilt, animals would huddle together, and your house might creak softly in the cold. And then there's the silence. No wind, no rustling trees, no distant cars rumbling down the street. Just quiet. Like the planet itself is holding its breath. Animals would stop their usual routines. Birds wouldn't sing at dawn because dawn never comes. Roosters would stay silent, confused about whether it was morning or night. Streetlights would flicker on and stay on, unsure whether they were needed. Even your body would notice. Your inner clock, tuned to the rising and setting of the sun, would drift. You'd lie in bed wondering, is it time to wake up or sleep again? But don't worry. In this version of the story, you're safe. The walls are still standing. Your bed is still warm. All the drama is happening far away, outside your cozy little bubble of blankets and pillows. Meanwhile, deep beneath your feet, something strange is happening. The Earth's core, a molten sea of iron and nickel, doesn't stop when the surface does. It keeps spinning, for a little while at least, and that means trouble for our planet's magnetic field. You see, our spinning core acts like a giant dynamo, creating the invisible magnetic shield that protects us from solar radiation. If the surface stops but the core keeps going, the balance changes. The magnetic field might weaken, flicker, or even collapse. In space, high-energy particles from the sun, normally deflected harmlessly away, could now begin to seep in. It wouldn't happen instantly, but slowly, invisibly, radiation levels could rise. Not enough to fry you in your bed tonight, but enough that astronauts would be in serious trouble. Communication satellites might glitch, compasses would spin aimlessly, and the auroras would blaze across the skies in colours we've never seen before. But let's not dwell on that. You're still warm, still safe, and still far from the chaos. Now picture the people. Imagine waking up to check your phone and realising that, according to your weather app, sunrise should have happened 3 hours ago. But when you peek through your curtains, it's still pitch black outside. People would flood social media with confusion. Sunrise Gate, frozen Earth, conspiracy theories, panic, viral videos of clocks ticking but the sky unmoved. But no one would have any answers. Scientists would scramble to explain the impossible. Governments would urge calm. And somewhere, a late-night talk show host would probably crack a joke about it. But beneath all the noise, the question lingers. What happens next? Let's leave the confused humans behind for a moment and take a quiet walk through a forest, or what's left of one. See, plants live by light and dark. They stretch toward the sunrise and rest beneath the stars. Without nightfall, trees would remain photosynthesizing endlessly until they start to weaken. Plants can't run on constant light. Even sunflowers need a nap. On the day side of the earth, the leaves would soak in endless sunlight, but eventually their cells would burn out. They'd droop like exhausted workers on an endless shift. Flowers that close at night would stay open, confused and wilted, and in the places trapped in darkness, the opposite would happen. No photosynthesis, no new energy. Just cold leaves waiting for a dawn that doesn't come. Entire fields of crops, wheat, corn, rice, standing still, as if frozen in time. Farmers watching helplessly as their livelihoods fade. But for tonight, let's imagine the trees are holding on, their roots deep, their leaves patient, as they've been through countless storms and droughts. Maybe they'll survive one more cosmic surprise. Now picture the animals. They're even more confused than we are. In the forests, nocturnal creatures like owls and bats might keep hunting long after they'd normally rest. On the eternal day side, creatures who usually hide at noon, foxes, rabbits, deer, might starve, trapped in an endless scorching daylight where predators see them all too clearly. Seabirds would wait for their migration cues, the change of light that tells them to fly north or south. But the light doesn't change, so they wait, perched silently on rocky cliffs, staring at a sun that refuses to move. And on the dark side of the earth, wolves and panthers prowl beneath starry skies that never brighten. Prey animals, unable to forage safely, would grow weak from hunger. Even underwater, the rhythms would break. Coral reefs bleach without alternating light. Fish migration stops. Tides, normally driven more by the moon than Earth's spin, still move, but life beneath them seems paused. But perhaps in our quiet story the animals sense something we don't. Maybe they huddle in burrows and nests, waiting calmly for the spin to return. Perhaps they know that nothing in nature lasts forever, not even this. Back in our homes, humanity stares into the sky, waiting for an explanation that won't come. Office workers skip their alarms. Sunrise was supposed to come at 6:30 a.m. It's now 10 a.m., then 2 p.m., then midnight again. But the light outside hasn't changed. Kids keep asking their parents if school is cancelled. Stores close early or stay open all night. Who can tell the difference anymore? The global economy? Let's just say it's taking a sick day. Imagine stock markets, normally ticking along with the sun's schedule, now stuck in limbo. Markets in Asia, Europe and the Americas frozen in the same daylight, or darkness, unable to coordinate. And then there are the people who thrive on routine. Morning joggers, evening walkers, night owls, early birds, all left wondering when exactly they're supposed to be themselves. When the labels don't fit anymore, who are we? Governments would try to hold on to normalcy. Maybe they'd declare, just follow your regular schedules. Pretend the sun is rising and setting. But humans aren't great at pretending for long. Circadian rhythms, your body's natural clock, are tuned to light. Without it, your hormones drift. Sleep becomes irregular. You might lie awake for hours, your brain confused by the endless twilight outside your window. Hospitals would fill with patients suffering from insomnia, migraines, exhaustion. Night shift workers wouldn't know when to sleep. Babies would cry at odd hours. Elderly people would grow restless. Crime rates might rise in the endless night, or drop in the endless daylight. Who knows? Time itself becomes meaningless when the sun refuses to mark its passage. And yet, somewhere in this confusion, people would adapt. Because humans always do. Astronomers, staring through their telescopes, would search for clues. Was it a cosmic event, a giant asteroid, an alien prank, or did some fundamental force of physics decide just for one night to pause the Earth's spin? They would look for wobbles in the moon's orbit, gravitational anomalies in nearby planets, changes in solar wind patterns. But nothing makes sense. The Earth's orbit around the sun continues. The moon keeps circling us, only the spin has stopped. Like a marble paused halfway through, rolling across a table, a mystery without an answer. Maybe, somewhere in the distant future, another civilization will study our fossilized records and wonder what happened on that one strange night when the planet stood still. Back to the birds for a second. You know how pigeons bob their heads when they walk? That's to stabilize their vision. They're balancing movement and stillness in perfect harmony. But what happens when the ground beneath them doesn't move anymore? Maybe they stop bobbing. Maybe they just stand still, heads tilted in confusion, staring at a sun that refuses to rise. Or maybe they fly in slow, lazy circles, waiting for a breeze that doesn't come. It's a small image, but somehow comforting. Even in a paused world, the birds keep flying. Weather, as you know it, comes from movement. Warm air rises, cold air sinks, and everything gets shuffled around by the Earth's spin. Without that spin, things change. Fast. On the day side, the sun keeps shining down. Normally, the Earth's rotation helps spread that heat around the globe. But now, no spinning means no sharing. The heat piles up. Air over the sunny side starts to swell and bake, forming vast, unmoving high-pressure zones. Think of it like leaving your oven on but forgetting to turn the fan on inside. The hot air just sits there, getting hotter. Cities would turn into pressure cookers, farmlands into kilns. Asphalt melts, crops wilt, and even shadows aren't much help because the heat radiates from the ground itself. And on the night side, cold. Deep, creeping cold. Without sunlight to warm it, the Earth's surface radiates its heat away into space, and there's no sunrise to stop it. Temperatures drop below freezing, then lower still. Lakes freeze. Rivers slow. Your breath fogs in the air like tiny ghosts escaping your mouth. Somewhere in the middle, the thin strip of twilight that divides day from night, life would scramble to survive. Plants, animals, maybe even people would migrate toward that narrow band of temperate safety. A line circling the entire Earth, where the sun hovers forever on the horizon, casting eternal twilight. It would be the most crowded, awkward place in human history. Imagine the traffic jams. Normally spinning air makes storms. Hurricanes swirl because of the Coriolis effect, created by Earth's rotation. Without it, weather systems stop spinning and start stacking. Instead of swirling storms, you'd get towering walls of clouds, miles thick, standing still like colossal statues. Thunderstorms would hover in place, endlessly dumping rain over the same patch of land until rivers overflow and streets become rivers. Imagine walking outside into a storm that never moves on. A curtain of rain so thick it feels like walking through a waterfall every second of the day, forever. Lightning flickering above like a broken strobe light in the sky. On the dark side, clouds might freeze in place, literally. Ice crystals suspended in the upper atmosphere, glittering faintly in the moonlight, motionless and cold. But for our sleepy story, let's imagine you're safe from all that. Warm in your bed, dry beneath your roof. The rain might be crashing down somewhere far away, but in your little corner of the world there's only quiet. Let's go back to that twilight zone around the Earth. It would be the only place where temperatures stay mild enough for life to continue. Birds migrate toward it. Herds of animals too. Wildebeests from Africa, elk from North America, camels from Asia, marching across continents, converging on the one place where day and night meet and hold hands. Humans would follow, cities emptied, highways packed with slow-moving caravans of trucks, bikes and people on foot. And what a strange place it would be. A golden red sky stretched overhead forever. Long shadows reaching endlessly toward the horizon. Plants flowering at odd hours. People sleeping whenever they felt tired, eating whenever they could find something to eat. It would be the Earth's last campground, a place where wolves, pigeons and farmers might all share the same clearing, waiting for the world to start spinning again. The oceans, always restless, would feel the change too. Without the spin, tides would still rise and fall thanks to the moon, but the big ocean currents, the Gulf Stream, the Pacific Gyre, would slow, then stop. These currents are like conveyor belts, carrying warm water from the equator toward the poles and cold water back again. Without them, the tropics would boil, and the polar oceans would freeze solid. Fish would scatter, searching for their usual migratory paths, only to find them gone. Coral reefs would bleach from the heat on the day side. Ice sheets would thicken on the night side, and somewhere in the middle, as always, the twilight waters would still shimmer. A calm, temperate sea, caught between extremes. Maybe a few sailboats would drift there, unmoving on glassy water, their sails slack, waiting for a breeze that may never come. Meanwhile, back in civilization, let's talk about something we almost never think about until it's gone. Electricity. Solar power, useless on the night side, overheated on the day side. Wind power, no spinning earth, no global wind patterns. Hydroelectric dams might hold out for a while, but even they would falter without consistent rainfall and snowmelt feeding the rivers. Sooner or later the lights start to flicker and die. Cities that once glittered like stars from space go dark block by block. Refrigerators stop humming. Phones stop charging. Satellite communications fade. And then the silence. Not the peaceful silence of bedtime, but the eerie stillness of a world powered down. But maybe, in our sleepy version of this story, your house keeps its power just a little longer. Enough for your fan to hum softly by your bedside. Enough for a nightlight to glow. Enough to drift off without wondering if the whole world is ending outside your window. Let's fast forward a bit. It's been a week since the earth stopped turning. Time still ticks on your clock, but the sky? Frozen. On the day side, people shade their windows with blankets, sheets, cardboard, anything to block the unchanging glare of the sun. Sunglasses are no longer fashion accessories. They're survival gear. On the night side, it's the opposite. People gather around campfires, huddled in thick layers of clothing trying to fight off the creeping cold. They burn furniture, books, anything flammable, because no wood pile lasts forever when the sun never rises. And in the twilight zone, the only place left where you don't freeze or roast, cities spring up almost overnight. Makeshift towns built from tents, scrap metal, and abandoned vehicles. Power grids don't work here, clocks don't matter. Life is dictated by temperature alone. If it's too hot, move west. If it's too cold, move east. People hunt, forage, trade. Old jobs fade away. No more stockbrokers, travel agents, or social media managers. Instead, you've got water carriers, firekeepers, and night watchers, though the night never comes. And as strange as it sounds, life continues. People laugh. Kids play in the endless golden light. Couples argue over who forgot to collect water. Even in catastrophe, we're still ourselves. Here's a fun question. How do you sleep when it's always light, or always dark? At first, badly. Your body is wired to the rhythm of day and night. Light triggers hormones that make you wakeful. Darkness signals your body to rest. Without those cues, your sleep cycle shatters. People become irritable, foggy, disoriented. Some sleep during random moments, collapsing in the middle of conversations. Others stay awake for days, only to crash without warning. But eventually, like always, humans adapt. Communities set artificial schedules. Work shifts are assigned. Midday naps are declared, even if it's been perpetual sunset for a week straight. Lamps are lit in the dark zones to mimic daytime. In the light zones, blackout curtains and underground shelters create artificial night. You'd probably develop a sleep schedule too. Maybe you listen to this story every evening, or whatever evening means now, to help you drift off. A quiet ritual in a world without nightfall. Now let's get practical. How do you feed billions of people when your crops are either freezing or frying? It's not easy. On the dark side, farmers try to grow mushrooms, sprouts and root vegetables underground, where it's insulated from the cold. They set up greenhouses with artificial light, though the energy needed is immense. On the day side, plants grow quickly at first, too quickly. They bolt, shrivel and die from heat stress. Shade cloths and irrigation keep some crops alive, but the water is finite, and without cool nights to slow their growth, they burn out fast. In the twilight zone, the soil is kinder. Here, small farms sprout between makeshift homes. People grow beans, potatoes, leafy greens. It's humble, but enough to scrape by. Food rationing becomes the new global norm. Restaurants disappear. Fast food chains close their doors. You're lucky if you get a bowl of rice and a few bitter greens once a day. People relearn old skills, how to hunt, fish, preserve food without electricity. And yet somehow, despite the struggle, you eat. Maybe it's not much. Maybe it's the same stew every day, but it keeps you going. In the old world, distance was measured in hours. A flight from New York to London took 6, a train from Paris to Berlin, a few more. But when the Earth stops turning, distance is measured differently. Now it's a matter of climate. If your city is trapped in endless heat, you walk until you find shade. If it's frozen, you keep walking until your fingers stop aching. The equator becomes a wasteland, too hot for human life. The poles are deadly cold, and in between, humans migrate toward the habitable twilight belt. Borders fade, old nations disappear under seas of sand or ice. New territories form wherever people stop to build fires and boil water. There are no countries now, just warm places, cold places, and the fragile middle where survival is possible. And as you sit by your campfire somewhere in that golden strip of twilight, you might wonder what your old life looked like. Was there traffic outside your window? A grocery store down the street? Now there's just the horizon and the quiet hum of survival. At night, or what used to be night, the stars are clearer than ever. With pollution from factories and cars fading, the Milky Way returns, stretching across the sky in a cosmic river. Meteors streak through the atmosphere, frozen in slow arcs, because nothing down here is moving anymore. Satellites still orbit overhead, flashing like lost messengers from the world you once knew, and the moon, still rising, still setting, because it isn't tied to Earth's spin. Its motion goes on, slow and steady, dragging the tides with it. If you're on the day side, you wouldn't see it at all, but in the endless twilight, there it is, quiet, distant, watching. And maybe, in a few hundred years, it will drift a little farther away, tugging at a world that no longer spins beneath it. So far, the Earth has been frozen in stillness. But what if this pause isn't permanent? What if the gears of the universe just needed a little break, and now they're ready to grind back into motion? No one knows how the spin stopped. No one knows when or if it will return. But let's imagine it happens. Let's imagine that without warning, one quiet morning or one endless afternoon, the Earth gives a low, deep groan beneath your feet, the kind of sound you feel in your bones, and then, slowly at first, the world begins to turn again, a little faster, then faster still. If it restarted instantly, the devastation would be impossible to describe. Everything that wasn't bolted down would fly eastward at hundreds of miles per hour. Oceans would leap from their basins. Skyscrapers would crumple, forests would flatten. But let's not imagine that. Too loud for bedtime. Instead, let's imagine it restarts slowly, mercifully, over several days. Like a giant engine sputtering back to life. At first, no one notices. Maybe a flag ripples in a breeze that wasn't there a moment ago. Maybe the birds begin to chirp, faintly sensing a shift in the Earth's heartbeat. Maybe, just maybe, the sun starts to move, just a little, across the sky. And then, after what felt like forever, sunrise. Can you picture it? The first sunrise since the world stopped. People gather in silent crowds, staring at the horizon. No one speaks. No one dares blink. The sun, locked in place for weeks, finally creeps upward, or downward, depending on where you are. The shadows move. Slowly, softly, they stretch and shift across the ground. On the dark side of the planet, the stars begin to fade, and the sky brightens into morning. A wave of warmth rolls over the frozen fields, waking the land like a gentle hand on your shoulder. And for the first time in what feels like forever, people breathe a little easier. But it's not over yet. You see, restarting the spin doesn't magically fix everything. It's more like stretching a stiff joint after years of sitting still. The winds that had gone quiet now surge again, but they don't follow the old patterns. They're confused, stumbling across the continents like toddlers learning to walk. Storm systems reform, torn between the old ways and the new motion. Some spin clockwise when they should spin counterclockwise. Some never form at all. The oceans too try to remember how to move. Currents restart, but they're chaotic, sending warm water where cold should be, and cold where warmth is needed. Coastal areas might flood as tides overcompensate, sloshing chaotically against the shore. It's as if the entire planet has woken from a long nap, groggy and uncoordinated. But humans? Humans have been waiting. Those tent cities in the twilight zone. Slowly, people begin to move back toward their old homes. Back toward the cities that were left behind in the deep freeze or the scorching heat. The frozen suburbs of Moscow thaw and families return, brushing frost from doorways. Deserted towns in equatorial Africa begin to cool, and plant life cautiously creeps back into cracked sidewalks. Power stations long abandoned hum back to life. Solar panels see sunlight again, and wind turbines spin in the fresh breeze. Civilization, like the Earth itself, restarts in fits and bursts. It isn't easy, it isn't quick. But little by little, humanity begins to reclaim the planet. But the sky still isn't quite right. The stars seem different. Perhaps because your heart has changed more than the constellations, or maybe because the Earth's restart has nudged the planet slightly off its usual tilt. Astronomers recalibrate their telescopes and sigh, yet another thing to relearn. And the auroras, they're spectacular. With the magnetic field rebooting, the skies dance with the light. Brilliant ribbons of green, purple and red ripple across the night sky, visible far beyond the polar regions where they normally stay. Children point up in awe. Elders watch silently, remembering when the skies stood still. It's a new world now, slightly off kilter but alive. Even after the Earth spins again, the question lingers. Why did it stop? Scientists propose theories: cosmic interference, an unexpected gravitational anomaly, a glitch in the fabric of space-time. Or maybe, they whisper only half-jokingly, the universe was just tired. But no answer fits. Some questions, it seems, are meant to stay unanswered. And maybe that's okay, because life moves on. It always does. Weeks turn into months, and life finds a new rhythm. But it's different now. The clocks are ticking again, but nobody trusts them like they used to. People rely on their own senses more. They wake with the sunrise, not the alarm. They rest when the light fades, not when a schedule tells them to. And in a way, it's quieter now. People don't rush the way they did before. What's the hurry after all? They've seen what it's like when the world stops spinning. Deadlines feel smaller. Arguments feel lighter. Some meetings never restart and no one misses them. Families gather by candlelight just because. Farmers plant carefully, knowing how fragile the seasons can be. Kids laugh when the breeze shifts directions, because once, for a little while, there was no breeze at all. And somewhere deep in the night, far from cities, you can still hear the faint hum of the world spinning beneath your feet. Slow, steady, fragile, alive. The animals return to their rhythms as well. Owls hunt in the night. Wolves howl at the rising moon. Birds build their nests facing the morning sun as if daring it to stay still again. But you wonder, do they remember? Maybe, when the sunrise is a little late, the birds tilt their heads and wonder, is this the day the sky freezes once more? Is this the morning the earth stands still again? But then the light keeps moving, and they fly on. The oceans hum a new tune. Currents find their paths again. Fish migrate, reefs slowly recover, and beaches are reshaped by tides that once stopped mid-pulse. But there are scars, frozen ports, drowned coastlines, new islands where floods once washed away the land. Maps are redrawn. Trade routes shift. Some cities are gone forever, buried under ice or swallowed by heat. Others, once small villages in the twilight zone, become the new centres of the world. Life changes course, as it always has. And what about you? You're home again, in your own bed. Maybe the sheets are the same, maybe your pillow still fits just right. But when you close your eyes, there's something new in the quiet. It's not the absence of noise, it's the memory of stillness. You've lived through a night without sunrise, a morning that never came, and yet here you are, listening to your heart beat in time with the world as it spins once more. You smile softly to yourself. Tomorrow the sun will rise as it always has, but now you know what it means when it doesn't. And maybe, just maybe, you'll appreciate that sunrise a little more. Will it happen again? No one knows. The earth spins on, silent and fragile, hurtling through the void. Maybe one day it'll pause again, or maybe it was a once-in-a-lifetime fluke, a hiccup in the universe, a glitch in the great cosmic clock. But for now, the winds blow, the tides roll, the sun rises and sets, and you sleep. Let's imagine it's a quiet spring morning. The sun rises, the flowers bloom, and the world stretches awake. But one important sound is missing. No buzzing. Somewhere deep in their cosy hives, the bees are still sleeping. Not just hitting snooze once or twice, they're completely out, tucked into their waxy little bedrooms, antennas drooping, wings folded like tired umbrellas, dreaming of pollen fields and warm summer days. And outside, the world waits. At first it's peaceful. You stroll through a garden and notice how still it is. Flowers stand wide open, waiting for visitors. Apple blossoms spread their petals to the breeze, lavender sways gently, and the cherry trees hum quietly in the sun. But no bees come, no buzzing shapes darting between blossoms, no lazy bumbles weaving between the tulips. Just silence. It feels strange, like walking into a party where no one showed up. The tables are set, the lights are on, the snacks are ready, but the guests are still snoozing in bed. You might not think flowers have feelings, but in their own slow way, they do notice when no one stops by. You see, most flowers don't just bloom for fun. They bloom to attract pollinators. Bees, butterflies, beetles, bats. Creatures that carry pollen from one flower to another, helping plants make seeds, fruit, and the next generation of flowers. When no bees visit, the flowers wait, and wait, and wait some more. At first it's fine. A flower can stay open for a day or two, maybe even longer, but eventually, without a visit from a bee, the petals begin to droop. The pollen dries out, and the plant's chance to reproduce fades away. In a world without bees, the flowers are left holding their breath. Now think bigger. Those blossoms on the apple trees, they won't turn into apples without pollination. Same with cherries, and plums, and pears, and almonds, and blueberries, and cucumbers, and pumpkins, and yes, even coffee. Without bees buzzing from bloom to bloom, the pollen stays where it is. Fruit trees bloom in vain. Greenhouses fill with beautiful flowers that never grow into vegetables. Fields of strawberries stay flowered but fruitless. At first, you don't notice. Grocery stores are still stocked, but give it a week, and the fresh produce aisle starts to look a little empty. And it's not just about the food we eat directly. Livestock feed, like clover and alfalfa, relies on bees too. No pollination, no feed, fewer cows, goats, and chickens. It's like pulling one thread from the sweater of the world and watching the whole thing unravel. But let's not stop with humans. What about all the animals that rely on fruits and seeds? Birds, squirrels, bears, foxes, insects. They all eat the plants that bees help pollinate. When the flowers don't turn into fruit, those animals go hungry. A hummingbird flits past an empty bloom and keeps flying, stomach rumbling. A black bear wakes from hibernation to find no berries on the bush. Even tiny creatures like beetles and ants find fewer seeds to munch on. The silence of the bees ripples outward, touching wings and paws and claws in every corner of the forest. It's as if the bees are holding the starting whistle for spring, and without them, no one else knows when to begin. Of course, people notice pretty quickly, farmers especially, so they get to work. Some start hand-pollinating crops with tiny brushes. Others rent trucks full of alternative pollinators, like mason bees, butterflies, or even robots. In some places they climb ladders and gently dust apple blossoms by hand. A task that takes a single bee seconds now takes a human hours, and despite their efforts, it's slow going. You can't replace millions of bees overnight. But humanity, stubborn as ever, keeps trying. Back in the hive, though, life is calm. The bees snooze on, oblivious to the chaos outside. Maybe they're having the best nap of their lives. Maybe they've been working too hard. Or maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for the world to slow down and notice them for once. Inside, it's cosy. The wax cells are warm, the honey reserves full, and the queen rests in her chamber. Even the worker bees, normally buzzing with activity, curl up in little clusters of sleeping stripes, and for the first time in forever the hive is silent. Now a few days have passed and the bees are still dreaming. Outside, the world has shifted from puzzled curiosity to quiet concern. Farmers stand in their fields watching blossom fall unpollinated to the ground. Wildflowers bloom and fade with no one to carry their golden dust. In the orchards, the first hints of trouble appear. Tiny apples that should have been forming don't. Cherry trees wear their blossoms like abandoned party decorations. The petals fall like confetti onto empty fields, and in the wild places where humans rarely tread, things grow strangely quiet. Fewer birdsong, fewer rustling wings. It's as if the whole planet is holding its breath, waiting for the smallest creatures to wake up and set it in motion again. Picture a bear in the woods, lumbering out of its winter den, hungry, ready to feast on berries, roots, and sweet springtime blossoms. But instead of a banquet, the bear finds silence. The blueberry bushes are bare, the raspberry vines never fruited, even the clover patches usually buzzing with life are eerily still. The bear sniffs, paws at the empty stems and trudges onward. Maybe it'll find something else, or maybe it'll have to wander farther than ever before, burning energy it barely has left after the long sleep. And it's not just this bear. Across the forests and fields, foxes, deer, raccoons and tiny rodents all search for food that never grew. One small absence has left a big, hungry hole in the food chain. By the end of the week, some of the flowers give up. See, blooming takes energy, a lot of it. Plants don't open their petals forever. They open them when they expect visitors. Bees, butterflies, beetles, who will carry pollen from flower to flower. But when no one comes, the flowers close. They fold their petals, drop their pollen, and save their strength for another day. Maybe next year, they think, the bees will return. And just like that, fields once bright with colour fade back to green and brown. Beauty gone quiet like a stage waiting for its performers. Meanwhile, back in the human world, the impact finally hits home. At first, people don't notice. Bananas and potatoes are still on the shelves, plants that don't rely on bees. But the apples? Gone. Blueberries? Nowhere to be found. Almond milk? Out of stock. Even foods you wouldn't expect start disappearing. Coffee beans, cucumbers, zucchini, pumpkins, peppers, all of them rely on pollinators, most commonly bees. Prices go up. Restaurants start removing dishes from their menus. Smoothies are suddenly a lot less fruity, and the ripple effect doesn't stop there. Less food for people means less feed for animals, fewer seeds for planting. And next season, well, it might be worse. You wouldn't think a lack of bees changes the air, but it does. Bees in flight stir the air as they zip from flower to flower. Their buzzing wings are like tiny fans, moving pollen, spreading scents, stirring life. Without them, the air feels stiller somehow, quiet in a way that feels wrong, like the hum of life has been muted, and in that stillness, some insects take advantage. Flies swarm flowers, though they aren't nearly as efficient. Wasps patrol the gardens, but they're no match for the bees' delicate touch. Butterflies try their best, but they're slow and fewer in number. The flowers miss their bees. Let's not forget the honey. You might think of honey as just a sweet treat for toast or tea, but for bees, it's survival, and without bees awake to make it, the honey stays stored in hives, untouched. Humans, of course, notice the shortage. Honey jars on grocery shelves dwindle, bakeries adjust their recipes, tea lovers sigh into their cups. But inside the hive, the honey waits, a golden reminder that the bees are not gone, just sleeping. And maybe that's the strangest part. This isn't a story where the bees have vanished. They're still there, dreaming, resting, taking a long overdue break from the endless work of keeping the world alive. Nature is resilient, though. In the absence of bees, other creatures step up. Butterflies flutter through meadows, sipping nectar and carrying pollen on their fragile wings. Moths, usually night workers, stretch their shifts into the daylight hours. Beetles clumsily tumble through blossoms, spreading what pollen they can. Even hummingbirds dart between flowers, their tiny bodies doing their part. It's not enough. Not yet, but it's something. The world hasn't given up. It's just adapting. Slowly, imperfectly, but adapting all the same. Weeks pass. The bees are still asleep. And something strange happens. People begin to adjust. Sure, fruit is scarce, and flowers bloom without purpose. But life, stubborn, adaptable life, keeps going. People start planting crops that don't need bees. Grains, leafy greens, root vegetables. Wheat, corn, rice, potatoes, carrots. They fill bellies, though they don't brighten meals the way berries and melons did. Gardens look different too. Instead of rows of bright flowers, people grow vegetables under green mesh, focusing on food over beauty. The world turns a little duller, but a little more practical. Still, people glance toward the empty blossoms and wonder, when will the bees return? Of course, scientists are on the case. They visit hives around the world, listening with tiny microphones, and they find something odd. The bees aren't dead. They're alive in there. Alive, but unusually quiet. Heartbeats slow, wings unmoving, almost like hibernation. Except bees don't hibernate, at least not like this. Some researchers propose that the bees have entered a self-induced sleep cycle triggered by who knows what. Climate change, pollution, a global magnetic pulse, or maybe, just maybe, a collective decision to pause, rest, recharge. No one can agree on why, but the result is the same. Until the bees wake up, the world is on hold. In the absence of answers, stories fill the gap. Children sit beneath leafless apple trees and spin tales. They say the bees got tired from working too hard, and the flowers promised to wait for them. They say the queen of the bees is dreaming the sweetest dream, and when she wakes, the bees will return. They say the world has been too noisy, too busy, and this silence is the bees' way of teaching humans to slow down. The stories spread, painted on sidewalks in chalk, whispered at bedtime, drawn on walls in vibrant murals. Sometimes when the wind stirs the wildflowers, it almost feels like the bees are listening, and though the bees are silent, the world isn't empty. Birdsong grows louder. The wind rustles through the trees. Humans, missing the constant hum of busy wings, learn to listen to quieter sounds. The creak of branches, the patter of rain, the soft rustle of leaves brushing against each other like old friends. Even in absence, the world finds ways to speak, and maybe, in this new silence, some people find peace. Not the busy peace of finishing a to-do list, but the slow peace of simply being still. Not all plants give up so quickly. Some are stubborn. The passion flowers keep opening their brilliant purple petals every morning, hoping for a sleepy visitor. The sunflowers track the unmoving sky, waiting patiently. The clover spreads quietly along the ground, covering fields in soft green as if tucking the earth under a blanket. They wait, because that's what plants do. They wait because somewhere deep in their roots, they remember that the bees will return, eventually. And just when things seem bleak, nature offers a backup plan. Some plants don't need bees at all. They let the wind carry their pollen, scattering it across fields and forests like invisible confetti. Corn does this. Wheat too. Grasses and some trees join in. It's not as precise or elegant as a bee's careful touch, but it works. Slowly, patches of the earth begin to regrow. Not as brightly, not as sweetly, but enough. Enough to remind everyone, human and otherwise, that life always finds a way. And what of the beekeepers? They sit outside their silent hives waiting. They tend the gardens nearby, hum songs to the empty air and tell the bees stories, just in case someone inside is listening. They check the honey stores, refill the water dishes, and leave fresh lavender by the entrances. "Take your time," they whisper. "We'll be here when you wake up." Because sometimes, all you can do is wait and hope. Then, one morning, though it feels the same as every other morning, someone notices a sound. It's faint, so faint you can mistake it for the breeze through the leaves, a soft rhythmic hum like a tiny heartbeat. Beekeepers press their ears to the hives. Scientists hold their microphones closer. Children stop playing and listen. And there it is again, buzzing, not loud, not fast, just stirring. Like a long stretch after a deep sleep. A single worker bee shuffles to the hive entrance, blinking in the sunlight. She takes a few cautious steps onto the landing board, wobbles slightly and then lifts into the air. She circles the hive once, twice, testing her wings. Then she flies, slowly at first, then with purpose, toward the waiting flowers, and the world exhales. Her first stop is a daisy, petals wide open despite the weeks of silence. She lands gently, brushing against the pollen-laden centre, collecting golden dust on her legs, then to a dandelion, then a lavender bloom. Each flower seems to sigh in relief as if saying, "Finally, there you are." Other bees soon follow, stumbling sleepily out of the hive like commuters on a Monday morning, groggy, a little clumsy, but ready to work. The buzz returns to the garden, softly at first, like an orchestra tuning up before the music begins. And for the first time in a month, a honeybee wiggles in a waggle dance, pointing her sisters toward the richest flowers. Across meadows and orchards, something stirs. Blossoms that had curled closed slowly unfurl their petals. Cherry blossoms, apple flowers, squash blooms, they all open, tentative but hopeful. It's as if the whole plant kingdom sensed the change in the air. The bees, still sleepy, visit one by one. Dusty pollen is gathered, nectar is sipped, and life resumes its careful, complicated rhythm. It's not an overnight fix. Some crops missed their window, some fields have already faded, but enough remain. The cycle begins again, and where there are blossoms, fruit follows. Berries ripen in the wild, apples and pears begin to grow, squash vines tangle across gardens, heavy with yellow blossoms that will soon become food. Animals return to the fields and forests, noses twitching, paws digging. Bears find blueberries again. Birds dart through the trees, pecking at ripening fruit. Even tiny rodents, once scraping by on roots and seeds, find their favourite treats returning. The food chain, broken for a time, reconnects. Quietly, gently. People notice too. Markets start to refill. Slowly, carefully. Honey finds its way back onto grocery shelves. Farmers smile a little more, still cautious, but finally hopeful. And the children. They gather around the first flowering tree in bloom, holding out their hands as bees buzz past. Some children draw them in notebooks, others whisper, "Welcome back," as the bees float by. And somewhere in the back of their minds, people wonder, will the bees sleep again someday? Will this happen again? No one knows. But for now, they're awake. And that's enough. In the end, the bees didn't leave forever. They rested. And maybe in their absence, the world learned something important. That even the smallest workers deserve a break, that nature doesn't run on human deadlines, that sometimes the best thing we can do is wait quietly, listen gently, and let the world heal at its own pace. The bees don't ask for applause. They don't demand thank yous. They simply buzz on, visiting flowers, gathering pollen, building the future one tiny trip at a time. Even as the sun sets, the work continues. You'd think bees would rest again after their long nap, but no. As the evening cools, a soft buzzing still hums across fields and gardens. It's quieter now, like a lullaby for the plants, but it's there. A few late workers zigzag through twilight, squeezing in one last visit to a stubborn daisy before heading home. Back at the hive, the others unload their pollen baskets and share their finds, dancing their tired little feet in the warm, waxy corridors. It's not frantic, it's not rushed, it's just steady. And beneath it all, the world spins on, a little wiser than before. Meanwhile, the scientists gather in virtual meetings and lab basements, eyebrows raised, equations flying. Some say gravity has simply paused for a while, like taking a coffee break. Others think something bigger is at play, a cosmic hiccup, a vacation day written into the universe's user manual. A few propose that gravity isn't gone at all, just tired. But no one has answers. And gravity? Well, gravity doesn't return their emails. You might wonder what happens to the oceans. They rise, of course. Not as a giant wave, not a disaster movie tsunami, but as a slow, shimmering lift. Water rises from the surface in great shimmering domes, hanging above the ocean floor like crystal mountains suspended in the air. Ships gently float alongside them, bobbing like corks without any real anchor. Fish glide through the air as if they never needed water at all, darting in lazy spirals around floating reefs. For the first time in forever, the ocean is neither up nor down, just suspended. And beneath it, the sand waits patiently. Night comes, though it's hard to tell when you're floating gently above your bed. Some people tie themselves to bedposts. Others build blanket cocoons, hugging themselves to sleep like space travellers. And for some, it's the best sleep they've ever had. No pressure on their joints, no weight on their shoulders, just the gentle embrace of nothingness holding them aloft, until they turn over in their sleep and drift softly into the ceiling fan. Whoops. By day 3, cities look different. Sidewalks? Gone. People float down the street tethered to lamppost by jump ropes, extension cords and old garden hoses. Office workers drift through cubicles on bungee cords. Kids in playgrounds tie themselves to the monkey bars, swinging in slow motion like astronauts on a spacewalk. And in some places, entire buildings gently creak against their moorings. Skyscrapers sway like kelp in an invisible tide, anchored only by foundations that, without gravity, serve more as suggestions than commands. Yet somehow, pizza delivery still works. The driver wears ankle weights and launches the box gently through the front window, where it floats like a cheesy UFO across the living room. Out in the wilderness, things grow even stranger. Trees float slightly above the soil, their roots dangling like sleepy jellyfish. Squirrels leap between floating branches, missing wildly but landing softly in midair. Pine cones hang suspended halfway between branch and forest floor, like nature paused mid-sentence. Leaves drift off their trees but never reach the ground. Instead, they form slow-moving rivers of colour, rustling quietly as the breeze nudges them along, and somewhere deep in the woods, a deer floats serenely across a meadow, legs tucked beneath it like a giant brown balloon, wondering quietly if this is what birds feel like. Morning routines are the most comical. Cereal? Now a floating constellation of crunchy stars. Milk? A spherical blob orbiting your spoon like a tiny moon. Coffee? It refuses to pour, instead forming floating amber beads that you slurp midair like an over-caffeinated hummingbird. And toast? Toast just floats away. It doesn't care about your plans. People adapt though. They build little nets to catch their food. They drink soup through straws, eat sandwiches one-handed while holding onto a ceiling beam, and laugh between bites because honestly, what else can you do when your bacon floats away mid-bite? Without gravity, sports evolve fast. Soccer becomes three-dimensional, with players spinning in slow-motion bicycle kicks while gently bumping off invisible walls. Basketball courts stretch upward, and slam dunks turn into graceful floating pirouettes. Even chess changes. Pieces float off the board if you aren't careful, and pawns sometimes drift into your opponent's lap halfway through a match. But perhaps the most popular new sport is something simple: floating tag. Played in parks, backyards, and even living rooms, players bounce gently between walls, ceilings, and treetops, chasing each other in slow, giggling pursuit. No scorekeeping, no referees, just the joy of floating. Meanwhile, the scientists gather in virtual meetings and lab basements, eyebrows raised, equations flying. Some say gravity has simply paused for a while, like taking a coffee break. Others think something bigger is at play, a cosmic hiccup, a vacation day written into the universe's user manual. A few propose that gravity isn't gone at all, just tired. But no one has answers. And gravity? Well, gravity doesn't return their emails. You might wonder what happens to the oceans. They rise, of course. Not as a giant wave, not a disaster movie tsunami, but as a slow, shimmering lift. Water rises from the surface in great shimmering domes, hanging above the ocean floor like crystal mountains suspended in the air. Ships gently float alongside them, bobbing like corks without any real anchor. Fish glide through the air as if they never needed water at all, darting in lazy spirals around floating reefs. For the first time in forever, the ocean is neither up nor down, just suspended. And beneath it, the sand waits patiently. Night comes, though it's hard to tell when you're floating gently above your bed. Some people tie themselves to bedposts. Others build blanket cocoons, hugging themselves to sleep like space travellers. And for some, it's the best sleep they've ever had. No pressure on their joints, no weight on their shoulders, just the gentle embrace of nothingness holding them aloft, until they turn over in their sleep and drift softly into the ceiling fan. Whoops. By day 3, cities look different. Sidewalks? Gone. People float down the street tethered to lamppost by jump ropes, extension cords, and old garden hoses. Office workers drift through cubicles on bungee cords. Kids in playgrounds tie themselves to the monkey bars, swinging in slow motion like astronauts on a spacewalk. And in some places, entire buildings gently creak against their moorings. Skyscrapers sway like kelp in an invisible tide, anchored only by foundations that, without gravity, serve more as suggestions than commands. Yet somehow, pizza delivery still works. The driver wears ankle weights and launches the box gently through the front window, where it floats like a cheesy UFO across the living room. Out in the wilderness, things grow even stranger. Trees float slightly above the soil, their roots dangling like sleepy jellyfish. Squirrels leap between floating branches, missing wildly but landing softly in midair. Pine cones hang suspended halfway between branch and forest floor, like nature paused mid-sentence. Leaves drift off their trees but never reach the ground. Instead, they form slow-moving rivers of colour, rustling quietly as the breeze nudges them along, and somewhere deep in the woods, a deer floats serenely across a meadow, legs tucked beneath it like a giant brown balloon, wondering quietly if this is what birds feel like. Morning routines are the most comical. Cereal? Now a floating constellation of crunchy stars. Milk? A spherical blob orbiting your spoon like a tiny moon. Coffee? It refuses to pour, instead forming floating amber beads that you slurp mid-air like an over-caffeinated hummingbird. And toast? Toast just floats away. It doesn't care about your plans. People adapt though. They build little nets to catch their food. They drink soup through straws, eat sandwiches one-handed while holding onto a ceiling beam, and laugh between bites because honestly, what else can you do when your bacon floats away mid-bite? Without gravity, sports evolve fast. Soccer becomes three-dimensional, with players spinning in slow-motion bicycle kicks while gently bumping off invisible walls. Basketball courts stretch upward, and slam dunks turn into graceful floating pirouettes. Even chess changes. Pieces float off the board if you aren't careful, and pawns sometimes drift into your opponent's lap halfway through a match. But perhaps the most popular new sport is something simple: floating tag. Played in parks, backyards, and even living rooms, players bounce gently between walls, ceilings, and treetops, chasing each other in slow, giggling pursuit. No scorekeeping, no referees, just the joy of floating. But not everything floats. Some things, it turns out, still remember gravity. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of stubbornness. Deep underground, rocks stay put. Volcanoes still rumble beneath the surface. Some rivers, hidden beneath dense forests, keep trickling quietly along their ancient paths. And the tides, though softer, still shift with the moon's gentle tug. It's as if gravity left a few sticky notes behind. Be back soon. G. Eventually, the scientists gather what little data they have and offer a guess. Gravity isn't gone, it's just resting. Like a muscle that's been holding the universe together for billions of years, finally saying, I need 5 minutes, maybe 10. No one knows when it'll return. Tomorrow, next year, 1,000 years from now. But most agree. Gravity's holiday probably isn't permanent, and when it does return, well, everything that's been floating will have to land again. So people start tying down their favourite lamps, just in case. And then a bigger question sneaks into their minds late at night when they're floating above their beds, staring at the drifting stars. Do we want gravity to return? Sure, life was simpler when your toast didn't float away. But there's something beautiful about this floating world. Something peaceful about not being weighed down all the time. Maybe gravity could take 1 more day off, or maybe 2. Maybe, they think, it's okay for the universe to pause now and then, just to float. And then, one morning, it feels like Sunday, though the calendar's long forgotten. The world shivers. Not a violent quake, just a soft, quiet yawn beneath your feet, or where your feet used to be. The oceans ripple slightly like a sleepy stretch. Pebbles wobble on sidewalks, and somewhere in the distance a single apple finally falls from a tree, landing with the quietest of thuds. Gravity is waking up. At first it's gentle. A floating book drifts downward, landing softly on a table. A child, tethered to a playground swing, gently sinks into their seat with a surprised giggle. Raindrops, suspended mid-air for days, finally begin to fall. Slow at first, then faster, spattering onto grateful soil. And for a moment, the whole world holds its breath, wondering, will it snap back all at once? But gravity, kind old force that it is, returns softly, carefully, as if it knows the world has grown used to floating. By lunchtime, shoes stay on the ground again. People feel the weight return to their bones, the gentle pull that says, you belong here, on Earth. At first, they wobble like toddlers learning to walk. Muscles ache slightly from all that floating. But laughter fills the streets as people rediscover what it means to stand still. And yet, something's different now. People don't rush. They walk softly, sit gently, pause a little longer before standing, as if remembering how fragile gravity really is. The oceans, vast and patient, return to their beds. Waves roll in, greeting the shore like an old friend. Fish dive deep, happy to be swimming in water instead of air. But high above, some clouds linger. A few birds still glide with less effort, as if the sky itself remembers how light things felt without gravity's grip. And maybe, just maybe, a single leaf still floats a little longer than it should, hanging in the air like a quiet secret between the earth and the sky. Life goes on. Coffee pours the way it used to. Apples fall from trees again. Socks stay on your feet. But people remember. They remember what it felt like to float freely. They remember the joy of letting go, even for a little while, and they keep a few things untied. A balloon on a windowsill, a hammock in the attic, a child's drawing of people flying through the stars. Because now they know, sometimes even the universe takes a break, and maybe one day it will again. Let's imagine it quietly slips away. No warning, no explosions, no epic science fiction battle. Just one evening, as the sun sets and the sky turns purple, the moon forgets to show up. People step outside expecting to see that familiar glowing face smiling down, but instead, nothing. Just stars, a lot of stars, and a whole lot of darkness. It's strange how empty the sky feels without it. The stars are still there, blinking softly, but they look a little lonelier, like a party where the host forgot to arrive. Orion stands frozen in the sky, his belt missing its silver spotlight. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness, but without the moon's glow, it feels a bit colder, a little more distant. People tilt their heads, searching. Maybe it's hiding behind a cloud, maybe it's late, but no, it's simply gone, at least for tonight. And it's not just people who notice. Wolves hesitate on the ridges, waiting for their moonlight cue to howl. Owls sit in the trees, blinking wide-eyed in the deeper dark. Even the insects pause, they're buzzing a little quieter, as if confused by the missing glow. Tides shift awkwardly, not quite sure whether to rise or fall. Sea turtles waiting to hatch on moonlit beaches remain still in their sandy nests, sensing that something's wrong. The world, usually so sure of its rhythms, stands still for a moment, listening to a silence where a familiar lullaby used to be. Naturally, people start posting about it. Whereas the moon trends on every social platform, theories fly fast. The moon got stolen by aliens. It's a glitch in the sky's software. NASA forgot to turn it on tonight. Astronomers scramble for explanations. Some stay calm and scientific. Others admit they're just as baffled as everyone else. But most people? They simply stare upward, cup their hands around a warm drink and feel something small and quiet inside. A little lonely, a little curious. Without the moon, streetlights feel harsher. Their pale glow looks artificial and flat against the endless dark. Campfires burn brighter, candles flicker longer, and porch lights hum softly into the night. But there's beauty in it too. People see stars they've never noticed before. Tiny constellations hidden in the moon's usual glow. Shooting stars streak across the sky like whispers in the dark, finally seen for the first time in years. And for once the night feels truly, completely like night. Some people panic, some laugh. But the poets? Oh, they thrive. They write verses by candlelight. The sky wore emptiness like a crown tonight. The tides paused their breathing while the moon rested. The stars sang alone. Tiny books of midnight poems pop up on coffee shop counters. Children draw crayon moons in the corners of their notebooks, as if inviting it back with colours and hope. And maybe, somewhere out there, the moon is listening. Out along the coastline, something feels off. Waves, used to their ancient rhythm, stumble. High tide doesn't reach quite as far as it should. Low tide lingers awkwardly, unsure when to rise again. Fishermen pause at the docks, glancing toward the dark ocean, waiting for the silver light that usually guides them home. The ocean feels heavier without the moon's pull, like a dance partner whose hand has suddenly slipped away mid-step. But the water still moves, just slower, softer, as if uncertain whether it should bother without its oldest companion. Nighttime wanderers, delivery drivers, late shift workers, stargazing couples find the roads darker, quieter, a little more mysterious. Street signs seem smaller without moonlight. The familiar glow on winding forest roads is gone, replaced by a velvet blackness where headlights struggle to reach. Some take longer routes home, sticking to well-lit highways. Others stop altogether, leaning against their cars, looking up and whispering, "Where did you go?" Even the foxes and raccoons pause on back roads, their tiny paws hesitant on moonless paths. Without the moon, some animals decide, maybe tonight's a night for rest. Fireflies keep their lights dimmer, as if sensing it's not their turn to shine. Moths circle porch lights a little less urgently. Even the frogs down by the creek sing their songs more softly, voices lost in a night without silver light to echo them. And deep in the forests, some creatures curl up in hidden places, deciding that if the moon can take a night off, maybe they can too. With the moon gone, the stars stretch out, unhindered. The sky becomes deeper, sharper, almost too big to take in at once. Galaxies that were once invisible now glow faintly on the horizon. The Milky Way spills across the heavens in a river of ancient light, as if saying, well, someone had to fill the silence. People who have never noticed the stars before find themselves staring up, quietly amazed. And those who always watch the sky, they smile. Because for one night, the stars get to tell their own story. And so the world waits. People sit on rooftops, on porches, beside lakes and on park benches. They wait for the first silver curve to rise above the horizon. They wait for the night to feel familiar again. But it doesn't. Not yet. Instead, there is only waiting and wondering. And a sky filled with stars who, perhaps for the first time in ages, have the night all to themselves. People are funny creatures. When something familiar disappears, they invent new routines to fill the space. In one town, people light paper lanterns and send them floating skyward. Tiny orange stars rising to meet the dark. In another, neighbours gather on sidewalks with mugs of tea, telling stories about what the moon might be doing. Maybe it's on vacation, someone says. Maybe it fell asleep behind a mountain, says another. Maybe it's watching us from the other side of the world, whispers a child. None of them really believe it, but saying it out loud feels comforting, and in the middle of an unfamiliar night, comfort is enough. Somewhere downtown, a saxophone player sets up on a street corner, sending lazy notes drifting upward. There's no moonlight to catch the sound, but the notes float anyway, curling around street lamps and empty sidewalks. A guitarist joins in, then a drummer with nothing but a bucket and a pair of sticks. Soon there's a small crowd gathered, not for answers, but for company. They sway gently in the dim light, feet tapping softly, breaths fogging the cold air. The sky listens, silent and vast, and maybe, somewhere far away, the moon does too. In bedrooms lit by night lights, children invent their own bedtime stories. The moon got tired of holding up the tides and took a nap. The moon is on a secret mission to rescue a lost star. The moon is baking cookies for the sun's birthday and lost track of time. Parents smile softly and tuck them in, secretly wishing one of those stories might be true. Because it's easier to picture the moon as playful or sleepy than to admit they have no idea where it's gone. Without the moon's gentle glow to mark time, the night feels stretched. Minutes seem like hours. Hours feel like whole lifetimes. People watch their clocks, unsure if they have ever really noticed how slowly midnight turns into morning. Some stay awake, waiting to catch the first glimpse of returning silver. Others fall asleep eventually, curled against window panes, faces turned toward the sky. And in the deepest part of the night, when even the stars seem to blink slower, the world holds its breath, waiting. It doesn't return all at once. The eastern horizon begins to glow, faint at first, like a secret slowly remembered. A soft pink blush creeps across the sky, nudging the stars aside. Birds, confused but hopeful, begin to sing, and while the moon hasn't returned yet, morning promises it will. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And for now, that's enough. Tonight the wind decides to stop. Not because it's angry, not because it's broken, just because, after billions of years of rushing through forests, slipping between skyscrapers and whispering across oceans, it's tired. So, on this one quiet evening, the wind simply pauses, and suddenly the whole world holds still. At first, no one notices. The leaves hang quietly on their branches, too polite to fall. Curtains sit motionless beside open windows. Flags, usually dancing proudly on their poles, hang limp like forgotten laundry. It's not unsettling at first, just calm. The kind of stillness you only notice when it's gone. Birds glide through the air but find their wings carrying them farther than expected. Kites launched into the sky stay frozen in place, neither falling nor soaring, caught between gravity and stillness. The world waits, ears tuned for a breeze that doesn't come. Out on the oceans, the waves flatten. No gust to ripple their surface, no salty breeze to stir the sails. Sailboats float, their sails drooping like sleepy smiles. Seagulls hover awkwardly, unsure whether to flap harder or just give up and sit. The water becomes a vast, polished mirror, reflecting the moon and stars without a single ripple to break the image. Somewhere a sailor smiles and whispers, "So this is what silence looks like." In the city streets, it's stranger. No breeze chases through alleyways. No sudden gust rattles the old neon signs. Plastic bags that would usually tumble down sidewalks lie flat and forgotten. Wind chimes sit silent, their voices caught in their throats. Laundry lines sag, waiting for the push that never comes. And in bedrooms high above the streets, people wake in the night, sensing something missing from the way the air usually brushes against their windows. They sit quietly, listening to the stillness, and in that quiet, the city feels both larger and lonelier than usual. By morning, weather reporters shrug. No storms, no fronts, no breezes, just stillness. Scientists pull out their charts, scratching their heads. Wind turbines sit idle, blades frozen mid-spin. Weather vanes give up and point nowhere at all. And people, without really meaning to, start whispering. As if speaking too loudly might disturb whatever quiet magic has fallen over the earth. Without the wind, smells stay put. The scent of morning bread hangs stubbornly above bakeries, refusing to drift down the street. Flowers perfume only their own gardens, their fragrances trapped in pockets of still air. And less pleasant things? Well, they linger too. The alley behind the fish market, usually cleared by a passing breeze, now holds on to yesterday's scent like an unwelcome memory. But somehow, it feels honest. For once, you smell only what is right in front of you. No more, no less. Out in the woods, the stillness feels ancient. Trees no longer sway. They stand like statues, branches outstretched, frozen mid-movement. Leaves hang like paper decorations in the still air. Animals move more carefully now. Foxes step without rustling the undergrowth. Owls glide noiselessly through the treetops, their feathers brushing against unmoved branches, and for the first time in centuries the forest listens only to itself. No wind to carry secrets between the trees, just silence and breath. In this strange, quiet world, people begin to notice the one thing still moving, themselves, the rise and fall of their own breath, the quiet swish of their sleeves as they walk, the soft thud of footsteps on unmoved leaves. And for some, this feels peaceful. They sit outside on their porches, sipping tea, letting the still air wrap around them like a blanket. Others feel restless. They climb hills, waiting to feel that cool breeze at the summit, but it doesn't come, and so they sit there, staring out at the unmoving grass below. The clouds drift slowly overhead, but they don't change shape as quickly. Rain doesn't fall sideways. Storms don't gather speed. Instead, the weather feels like it's taken a deep breath and decided to hold it. It's not hot or cold, not wet or dry, just paused. And somewhere, the world wonders how long this stillness will last. Without the wind, new sounds emerge. You hear the pages of your book turning, the soft tick of a neighbour's watch through an open window, the distant footsteps of a cat padding across a fence. Sounds once hidden by rustling leaves and howling breezes now stand alone, delicate and clear. It's a quieter world, not silent, but gentle, like a stage waiting for the wind's return. Then, one evening, quiet as a sigh, something shifts. A single leaf, long since still, twitches on its branch. A forgotten weather vane creaks, just once. A curtain stirs at the edge of an open window. It's not much, not yet, but enough. Enough to tell the trees, the birds, and the people who've been waiting. The wind is waking up. It doesn't return all at once. No sudden gust, no roaring storm, just a soft exhale, like someone gently breathing out after holding it in too long. The grasses bend ever so slightly. Flags find their shape again, and the oceans ripple in relief, waves finally finding their rhythm once more. Even the dust motes in sunbeams begin to dance again. People notice, but they don't rush to speak of it. They close their eyes and feel the breeze on their faces cool and comforting. A familiar presence returning home. Children laugh as their kites finally lift into the sky. Elders smile, rocking gently on their porches, letting the wind carry away the stillness of the last few days. And far away, in the forests and on the seas, creatures of all kinds stretch, shake, and resume their secret conversations on the breeze. When the wind paused, it left behind a gift. Stillness. A reminder that even the restless parts of the world sometimes need to rest. That it's okay to pause, to be quiet, to listen. And now, as the wind hums gently through the branches again, the world feels a little more grateful, a little more aware of the quiet spaces between gusts, and somewhere, maybe high above the tallest trees, or far across the endless oceans, the wind laughs softly to itself, because even after all these years it still enjoys a day off,